So we're going to do the last halacha, the last law, last paragraph in chapter 9, which is the final law of the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. And after that, I just want to share with you what I think will be brief, but you never know. Briefly, a ruling, a halacha, in the Rambam in a totally different place, which is actually was in today's daily portion of the study of Rambam for those that study it daily. And I just thought you'd be interested. And it is Bnei Noach related, so I believe I am allowed to share it with you. And then afterwards, I wanted to speak about next week's cleanse, because we are currently about 12 days before the 11th of the month of Nisan. So that's very, very special. So I want to give a little bit of an intro and maybe even start, but I want to, devote and dedicate that next week's class. At any rate, so chapter 9 in the Laws of Kings, halacha 14, law chapter, paragraph 14.
Chapter 12, 10?
I'm wondering.
10.
Yes, we are. I was, something looked like it was. Yes, sorry, my mistake. We are in the last halacha, which is chapter 10. Wondering, chapter 10, halacha 12. So strike that from the record. What we said before is 10:12. Paragraph 12, halacha 12. Okay, the last thing we said was about the dinim, about appointing judges. So interestingly, the Rambam pointed out in what we studied in our previous class that it is the Beis Din, the Jewish court, which has the obligation and the responsibility to appoint judges for the Noachites. And who should they appoint? So the Rambam said, if the Jewish court saw that amongst the Noachites, there are people that are worthy and fit to be judges, they should appoint them. And then they will litigate and judge the cases of the Noachites. And if that's not the case, if they saw that it's better to have Jewish judges, then they appoint Jewish judges. And the reading of that particular law in Maimonides seems to imply that it's preferred to have non-Jewish judges for the non-Jewish people. But that is only on condition that you're not compromising the quality of the judges, etc. If they're not fit or not as good to be judges, then you appoint Jewish judges. Okay, so halacha 12. Shnei goyim shebou lefanecha ladun b'dinei Yisrael. Maimonides is speaking to a Jew, like everything else. This is written for the Jews. Even the Noachite commandments, as we've discussed previously, are instructions for the Jews to teach and instruct the non-Jews, as we are trying to humbly do here. So, speaking to the Jew, if two non-Jews approach you, the Jewish rabbi, and they would like to be judged according to the Jewish law. Now remember, they're not Jews, and the rules, the civil laws are not identical to them as they are to Jews. Or, perhaps better put, they are not specified. And that's part of what the seventh law, dinim, is, that the non-Jews are to make laws. as far as what civil things would be permitted and forbidden, etc., like in business and all that. So let's say two non-Jews come and they say, we want to be judged according to your laws, according to the Torah laws. That's the divine law that, the Creator gave to his chosen people. So if it's good enough for that, we want to have that too. And the two of them want to be judged according to Torah law. Danin, we do judge them as such. Yes. Two non-Jews approach a Jewish individual or a Jewish court, and they say, we both want to be judged according to Torah law. We do that. So in other words, it's possible that by the law of the land, Mr. A would be in the right and Mr. B would be in the wrong. And it could be that by Torah law, it's the reverse. And the two of them come and they say, we want to go by Torah law. So we do it. And that is what we judge them. And then they can't complain, and then they can't take it after that to a secular court. What about the following case? One of these two non-Jews wants to judge according to Torah law, but the other one does not. We do not force or compel the one that does not want to follow the Torah law, but rather he is judged according to their laws, whatever the secular law is. All right, so you have the law of the land that in such and such a case, this is what's done. And one of them says, I want to follow Torah law. The other one says, I want to follow the law of the land. You cannot force that person to follow Torah law because they're not both Jewish. They're both non-Jews. But what about the following case? Case number 3. Haya Yisrael v'goy. The two litigants, one of them is a Jew and the other is a non-Jew. Now, the ruling in this case could lead to much discussion. It could seem very unfair. So before we say anything about it, let me just read it and translate it. Again, you have two people approaching, but this time they're not both non-Jews. One's Jewish and one's not. And they have a dispute, a financial argument, let's say, in business. So if we, the Jewish judges, we know that the Jew actually has merit in the secular law, in the law of the non-Jews, we judge for him with their laws, and we say to the other one, to the non-Jew, this is your law. If you would be up against a fellow non-Jew, a fellow Noachite, and you would be going to the secular courts, well, he would win. So too, in this case, the Jew has merit according to your laws. We're going to judge according to your laws. And if the Jew has merit according to our laws, in other words, if it was two Jews, so then this Jew would win the case. We then follow Torah law and not the law of the land. And we say to the non-Jew, this is our law. You've come before a Jewish court and he's Jewish, so you're going to have to follow our laws. So basically, we are being unfair, or I should say, we are favoring the Jew. Now, it doesn't mean, clearly does not mean, that if there is a dispute between a Jew and a non-Jew, and on all accounts, either way you look at it, whether it's from the Torah law or whether it's from the law of the land, the non-Jew would win, we still somehow say that the Jew is right. Oh, no, we don't do that. Absolutely not. We're saying, though, that if the Jew would win the case in either way, we always follow that. Still sounds like we're being kind of what's the term? Bias towards the Jew. However, interestingly, continues the Rambam and he says, V'chein, v'yeroyli, and it appears to me, which as a general rule, when the Rambam uses that expression, he probably doesn't have an absolute source in the Talmud or in the earlier sources, and this is his own understanding. So therefore, since he's very careful to base everything clearly on the ruling of the Talmud, and since the Talmud doesn't say what he's about to say, so he says, it appears to me. This is my opinion. So the Rambam says, it appears to me, we do not do the above mentioned approach to a ger toishav. But for the ger toishav, we always follow their laws, no matter what. So it's a Jew and a non-Jew. If in the secular law the Jew would win, we follow the secular law. And if in the secular law the ger toishav would win, but in Jewish law the Jew would win, we still follow the non-Jewish law, the secular law, and we favor the ger toishav. So we don't always make the Jew win in that case. In that case, we always follow the secular law, whether it works for the ger toishav or whether it doesn't. Furthermore, the chen yirayli, and so too, likewise, it appears to me, once we're on the topic of ger toishav, and we see how we treat ger toishav differently than a regular goy. Now, just to remind everybody, ger toishav is a resident. I don't want to use the word convert. A resident alien, which basically, as we've discussed a number of times, biblically speaking, there is the concept of a non-Jew choosing to reside in the land of Israel, and he formally accepts upon himself in front of a court to keep and adhere and observe these 7 Noach commandments. If he does that, he has certain rights that Jews have in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, and he's treated better, and we favor him over a regular non-Jew. And the Rambam tells us in a number of places that this category of a ger toishav only applies when you have the Jubilee year in effect, the 50th year, and that only applies when you have all the Jews living in Israel. So basically, we haven't had the Jubilee year in practice, and therefore haven't had a formal official ger toishav status for anyone over 2,000 years. But now that we're talking about the ger toishav, so the Rambam says it appears to him that we need to treat a ger toishav in derech eretz. That means manners, interacting with him, our social behavior with him, and gemilus chasadim, which means acts of kindness, such as lending him money, or visiting the sick, or burying the dead, all the things that are acts of kindness. Ki Yisro, like a Jew, like a Jew. Now, you probably know that the obligation of one Jew, how he treats and interacts with another Jew, is incredibly extreme. I would even use the word radical. More than just family and more than just close-knit brotherhood. The way that one Jew is obligated to be concerned and to treat and to interact with a fellow Jew. And here Maimonides is saying that it appears to him that the Jews need to treat the Ger Toishav like, similar to, a Jew. Reason? Because we are indeed obligated to support them financially, to give them their livelihood. And that's not speculation. In other words, that's not what the Rambam is saying, it appears to me. It appears to me is because of this, we are to interact and treat them in this particular way. That's what he's taking from it. That's his opinion. But what's it based on? It's based on a fact. The fact is that the Jewish community is obligated to support the Ger Toishav. Shneimar, as the verse states, Lager asher bisharecha titnena v'achala. To the ger, which is in your gates, in your city, give it to him, and he shall eat it. We are talking over here about non-kosher meat, the nevela. And how do we know that the word ger, in this case, means ger toishav, and not the other meaning of ger, which is a convert, someone who wasn't Jewish who became Jewish? Because once they become Jewish, all the laws of the Torah that apply to Jews apply to them. A ger, in the sense of a convert, is 100% Jewish, and there's basically no difference between them and Jewish law. They surely have to keep the dietary laws of kashrus. So how could the Torah say, give it to the ger? It obviously means ger toishav. When it says give it to the ger, as opposed to when it uses the word nachri. Nachri is a biblical word for a non-Jew. We've discussed this a long time ago. Let me just briefly explain. Literally, nachri, I would say a pretty accurate translation in English would be a foreigner. So that's a relative term. That could mean anybody outside of my immediate family. That could mean anybody outside of my club. That could mean anybody who doesn't have a membership in my community or congregation or city. So it's a very relative term, and it has to always be taken in context. When you say an outsider, a foreigner, if you're talking in a certain sense, in the United States of America, anybody who's not a citizen is a nachri, in using that word. If you're speaking in a certain state, I am living right now in the state of Illinois. Anybody who's not a resident of Illinois is a nachri. To be more specific, anybody who doesn't live in the city of Chicago proper. I live in Chicago. Anyone who lives in a different city in the state, or for that matter, even in a suburb of Chicago, is a nachri, and so on. So to bring it back to the religious setting, nachri is a non-Jew. Nachri can also be, in the context, a non-kohen, a non-priest. So there's many laws that apply to the Jewish kohanim, the priests who serve in the Beis HaMikdash. They have many rights and responsibilities and obligations, and therefore prohibitions that don't apply to others. So someone who's a non-kohen is a nachri. So generally speaking, the word nachri means a non-Jew because it means a foreigner, an outsider. So now The Torah says, what do you do with non-kosher meat? You sell it to the Nochri. And this verse that we quoted says, you give it to the ger. Give it to the ger? We just explained it can't mean the regular convert. What's the point of giving him non-kosher meat? He's a Jew. And it can't mean just any non-Jew, because there the verse states, sell it to him. Why not? Why should you take a financial loss? I mean, you shechted the animal or whatever, and it came out not kosher. So now you got this animal that, was worth $500, and you slaughtered it, and you were hoping for kosher meat, and it's not kosher. Well, you don't have to take the loss. Sell it at the market value as non-kosher meat to the non-Jew. When it comes to the ger, it says give it to him. So that is the verse that shows us that the Jews are obligated to financially support ger toishav, that we have to give it to the ger toishav. And now Maimonides is going to make a very basic and fundamental statement, ruling that is, in Jewish law. He's sort of presenting it as a question, and that which the wise men, the sages of the Jews stated, meaning the Talmud states. Okay, so this is a statement made in the Talmud tractate Gittin. It says in the Talmud, Ein koiflin lahem shalom. You may not address them, the non-Jews, with a double expression of shalom. Shalom, well, in modern days, it became a greeting which means hello or goodbye, but that's not really what the word means. The root of the word is peace, and it's actually a name, not one of the 7 holy formal names, but it is a lesser, but it's a name, a reference to, or if we may, a nickname to God Almighty himself. Shalom. Now, customarily, when 2 Jews meet, so the first one says to the other, Shalom Aleichem. Peace unto you. But it's more than just peace. It carries with it a great deal of blessing. It's like saying, may God be with you. May you have true peace from the one and only, so on. Now, sometimes there's an expression of a double usage of this word. There's a verse that says shalom, shalom, twice. That's very intense. In general, in Judaism, when something is said twice or repeated or doubled, that shows a continuity. So the Talmud says you're not allowed to use an expression of greeting of a double shalom when you speak to non-Jews. So Maimonides is sort of presenting this as a question against what he just said. He just said that we're supposed to treat the ger toishav like the Jew, like a fellow Jew, as far as derech eretz, manners, interaction, and gemilus chasodim, charitable, kind acts. Well, to the Jew, I say shalom, shalom, and now you're telling me I can't do that to the non-Jew, says Maimonides. The goyim, that's talking about a regular non-Jew. Loi beger toishav, not the ger toishav, meaning the Rambam holds that the same greeting that a Jew gives a fellow Jew, he is to give to the ger toishav. He could say shalom, shalom to the ger toishav. And afilu agoyim tzivu chachamim levaker chayleim v'likve meiseim meisei Yisrael ulefarnes aniyim bichlal aniyim Yisrael impnei darkei shalom. And then he says, and let me tell you something. Rabbinically, the rabbis have instituted, they made the following ruling. that even regular goyim, which remember, a goy is a nachri. That's the one that I sell the non-kosher meat to. I don't give it to him for free. And I'm not obligated to support him like I am a fellow Jew or a ger toshav. Yet, the Chachamim said that when it comes to non-Jews that are not ger toshav, they've commanded us to visit their sick, to bury their dead with the dead of the Jews. Now, obviously, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. When he says to bury them with the dead of the non-Jews, it does not mean side by side in the same cemetery, even though it sort of sounds like that's what he's saying over here, but that's not the meaning. But what he means is to be involved in the same way that we're involved in burying a Jew, to be involved in burying the non-Jew. And to support financially their poor, amongst or included in the poor of the Jewish people. But here's the catch. The next three words are very, very important, and they're actually pretty fundamental in many areas of Jewish law. Mipnei darkei shalom. The reason why the rabbis decided, remember, it's not biblical. The reason why rabbinically we are commanded, the Jewish people are obligated to visit non-Jews, not ger toshav, to bury their dead as we do our own, and not ger toshav, and to give them charity, is because of darkei shalom, the ways of peace, for the sake of peace. Meaning, there's the ger toshav. The ger toshav biblically is in a different category than the non-Jew. He's not Jewish, but he's in a totally different category than the rest of the non-Jews. Then you have the regular goy, the non-Jew. And even those, the rabbis felt that it's extremely important for the sake of darkei shalom, and we use that a lot in Jewish law. It's really used a great deal, even today, in a lot of practical rulings, that it's very important that we don't, say it in the negative, that we don't anger in any way the non-Jew. So therefore, for the sake of peace, we show them kindnesses that we generally do for our own. Harei Nemar, there's a verse that says, Toiv Hashem lakoyim. Hashem, God, is good to all. V'rachamov al kol ma'asav. And his mercy is on all of his deeds, everything that he created. In other words, God is good and kind and compassionate to everyone, to everything. Forget about people, anything he created. So if we're supposed to emulate him and go in his ways, v'nemar, and there's another verse that states, D'rochecha, its ways, referring to the ways of the Torah, darkei noyam, are the ways of pleasantness. V'chol nesiveiseha, and all of its paths, all of the ways of Torah, shalom, are peace. But again, the word shalom are God's peace. Meaning that the spirit, for sure, at least, the spirit of the verses in the Tanakh, in the Bible, is that the Jewish people are to be nice, kind, proper, fine people towards everyone. Now, there's much to say about that. Just to mention what he said earlier, or what it says in other places in Maimonides, when the Jewish people are in charge, when they have their own proper government, unlike today, when they have their own proper government and it's being run according to Torah law, so then we have a right to make the laws, or better yet, to uphold the proper Jewish law. And we have a right to decide who is a citizen of our land, who has a right to live in Israel and who not. So in those cases, as nice as we are, we're not allowed to allow a non-Jew live in the land of Israel, unless he's a Ger Toshav. So when you have a Ger Toshav, or for that matter, let's speak in very relevant, very practical terms, very current terms, giving away parts of the land of Israel to non-Jews. That is unequivocally, absolutely forbidden. It's a very grave sin. It's not allowed for a number of reasons. Primarily because it is not good for the security and safety of the people. And when it comes to that, it may seem like it's hard line and like it's not being nice. The truth is, it's actually nice for everybody. It's nice not only for the Jews. It is nice, ultimately, even for the non-Jewish world. No one should have to suffer terrorism. Terrorists don't have a right to be terrorists. The ideal thing, the best thing is not to kill the terrorists, that there shouldn't be any terrorists. That they shouldn't be terrorists. Not that the evil should be abolished and killed. That the evil should be abolished. Not the evildoers or the sinners. There should be no more sinners because there's no more sins. There should be no evildoers because they're not doing it. They became righteous. That's the ultimate. So even though at times it may seem like we're not being nice, but just like we have countless examples, like in education or like a parent with a child, not always do you seem like you're the nicest, kindest person. But we understand, of course you are. You care for the student, you care for the child, etc. But otherwise, the interaction on a regular daily basis between Jew and non-Jew, even if he's not a Ger Toshav, should be proper and nice and kind and compassionate. And therefore, even though biblically the Jew does not have the responsibility to give charity to the non-Jew if he's not a Ger Toshav, or don't have to go visit their sick. But the rabbi said, do it. Do it. So for example, let's say a Jew goes to hospital to visit sick people. So fine, he's allowed to come and say, can you give me a list of the Jewish people? Right? Now let's say he walks into a room. Two people, two patients in that room. One is Jewish, one is not. My understanding of this law is when the Jew comes in, primarily for the fellow Jew, and sees him and says, how are you? How are you feeling today? I came to visit you. And yes, I'm a fellow Jew, clergy, rabbi, whatever, or doesn't have to be, just fellow Jew. And is there anything I can do for you? Are they taking good care of you? And you have all your needs. Anything I can do for you? Okay, very nice. Spent 5 minutes with him, and I want to wish you a complete recovery. I may not ignore the non-Jewish roommate. I need, as a human being, as a Jew, to turn to him and to fulfill some obligation of visiting him. I have to somehow visit him. I may not have to spend as much time. Arguably, maybe one can say that, yes, you should. As much time as you spend with the Jew, spend with the non-Jew. I'm not going that far necessarily. But I do have to ask him how he's doing and take a sincere interest. Rabbinically speaking, this is what the rabbis instituted. And why? To put it very simply, Darkei Shalom. It's just not nice for the other person to say, see, if I know the other person, the Jew, if I'm related to the Jew, so then no one can come and complain. How come you came to visit your own brother? You didn't come visit me. What do you mean? That's exactly why. I came to visit my brother. But if he's not related to me, it's just a fellow Jew, then the other person might feel like, am I not a fellow human being? All right. Now, being that we're speaking about Ger Taishav, as I said at the beginning of the class, I want to mention what I think is an interesting halacha, an interesting law that is found elsewhere in today. What was today's study portion of Rambam? There is a positive commandment and a negative commandment. It's one of the 248 and one of the 365. That a Jew who has a Jewish employee working for him, or anybody who did any job for anybody, even if it's just one day, one job, one time, must pay him on that day. Meaning, if the person is a day worker, he worked during the day, I have the entire next night until daybreak, next daybreak, to pay him. If the person is a night worker, I have the entire next day until sundown to pay him. Unless, of course, it's not just one day. So whatever we made up, if he works for a week, then I have the last day, I have to pay him before the end of that day. Or if he works for a month or a year, whatever the agreement is, you must pay on time. And it's a positive commandment, and it's a negative commandment not to pay on time. So if I withhold wages and I'm a day late, I've transgressed. Well, what about my non-Jewish worker? Of course, I owe him the money, but am I actually transgressing if I didn't pay him the day that he finished the job, or the night after the day, or the day after the night? No. However, says the Rambam, when it comes to a ger toishav, you actually have the positive commandment to pay him on time. But if you don't pay him on time, you're not transgressing the negative commandment. Now, it's very unusual because generally speaking, we have many mitzvahs, many commandments that are both positive and negative. And it's almost impossible to find a case where you would only be fulfilling one of them or transgressing one of them. They go together. Many examples. Let me just give a couple. One is charity. There's the positive commandment that you must give charity to the person who is needy and comes ask. And there's the prohibition. You're not allowed to hold back, to hold your fist closed and not give. So if you don't give charity when you are obligated to, you're automatically transgressing both of these. And if you do, you're automatically fulfilling both these commandments, the positive, and I'm not transgressing the negative one. Another example, returning a lost article. Someone loses an item, so a Jew is obligated to return it. I cannot ignore it. So if I return the lost article, I fulfill the positive commandment. If I don't return it, I have transgressed. And therefore, you automatically are fulfilling both commandments. By returning it, you're doing the positive and the negative. And if you don't return it, not only are you transgressing, where it says that you can't withhold it, you're also transgressing because you're not returning it. One other example. Yom Kippur. the holy day of atonement, Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur. It's a positive commandment to afflict oneself, meaning to fast. No eating or drinking for Jew. It's a negative commandment to eat or drink. So if a person fasts on Yom Kippur, they've automatically fulfilled both of these commandments. They fasted and they didn't eat. And if the person does break their fast, they automatically transgressed both. They ate and they didn't fulfill the positive commandment of fasting. So there's many such examples where you can't split. If you're keeping it, you automatically have done two mitzvahs, two commandments. And if you transgress, you automatically. The ger toishav, paying him on time, is an exception. That you have a positive commandment to pay him on time. But if you don't pay him on time, you haven't transgressed the negative. So there is an obligation for a Jew to pay the ger toishav who did a job for him, an employee of his, on time. Whereas when it comes to a non-Jew, you're not obligated to pay him on time. Like anybody, like between any two non-Jews, just have to pay him. But if you're late, no, you're whatever the agreement was. Oh, okay. So I just wanted to mention, as I said, that next week is just a couple days before the 11th of Nisan. The 11th of Nisan is, of course, the birthday of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, King Mashiach. And this year, it's a super big one, the biggest. He is turning 120. And we know that traditionally 120, that is like a full life. And people wish each other till 120. Well, this is 120 coming up. So it's coming up on the 11th of Nisan, which is in about 12 days from now. So I would like next week to devote the entire class to speaking about him. Anyway, any questions or comments on what we learned today or not, or off topic? Give me a moment.
I don't have any questions. I did appreciate the teaching. I learned some things tonight, so I appreciate that. That's pretty much what I got.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that comment as well. It's always encouraging. So, yeah, let me just read that particular law that I was telling you about. Yeah, so it's in the laws of hiring or renting, chapter 11. So Maimonides, their rules that it's a positive commandment to pay your hired worker on time, on the day. And if the person was late, they're transgressing. And one would not get lashes for that because he's obligated to pay him the money. So whenever there's a payment, a financial payment, then he doesn't get lashes. Yeah, and he says in the Ger Toishav, there is the obligation of paying him on time. And if he was late, he did not transgress. Yeah, just like I said. And the reason why there's no transgression for being late with the Ger Toishav is because the verse says, where it speaks about the negative part, so it says, it uses the word reyacha, which means your fellow Jew. So because of that word, we know that the prohibition's not there, just the obligation is. So it's a positive commandment. Okay. So I hope to see you guys next week. Same time, Same station.
I'll be there
And
with bells on.
good. Bring some friends, and very good.
I'm passing out invitations every day.
Great. Thank you.
So,
All right. Yes.
I didn't get the link for where I could donate anything at.
Oh, I'm sorry. I better make a note of that. I am a poor fundraiser. That's
No problem. Noah High communities support Noah High teachings and everything.
Yes.
We're not just here to be speaking about it. We want to promote it so that it grows into the biggest thing in the world. Well, God's the biggest thing in the world. Probably even bigger than that. And then even bigger than that.
All right, fine. I'll try to get it to you, or get Bob to get it to you, or something.
That'll be
Very
great.
good. Okay. All the best.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Aaron.